Here's another example of Qur'an's literary perfection in mentioning each and every word in the right context. Simply, I will be comparing two phrases, very small phrases from two different verses. This is chapter number 16, Surah Nahl, verse 14, where Allah mentions His favors. One of them, He says, and you see the ships plowing their way through it, through the sea. He has subjected the sea here. So He's saying, you see the ships plowing their way through it. So mentioning the ships plowing first and then mentioning the sea next. In Arabic, mawakhira, plowing their way, fihi, through it, through the sea. So mentioning the ships, the description of the ships following by the sea. However, in Surah Fatir, which is way ahead, chapter number 35, that was chapter 16, this is chapter 35. Again, in verse 12 of chapter 35, mentions the favors, Allah mentions His favors. And one of them is that you see the boats or the ships in the sea, therein meaning in the sea, cleaving through it. Here He mentions therein meaning the sea or the ship, the sea first, and then He mentions the adjective, the description of the ships or the boats cleaving through the water. Fihi mawakhira, in it, plowing or cleaving through it. So why was Surah Nahl saying mawakhira fihi, plowing their way through the sea, and why was Surah Fatir saying fihi mawakhira, through it, plowing it or cleaving through the water? The question is, let's see the context. The answer lies in the context of the perfection of these word orders. In chapter number 16, where it was mentioning the ships, the description of the ships first and then the sea, the context is about things that human beings use to carry or to ride upon. This was verse number 14. If you start from see verse number 7 onwards, you will see He mentions such things. In the beginning, He says He created the cattle for you as a source of warmth, etc., etc. And then in verse number 7, He says, and they carry your loads to distant lands which you could not otherwise reach without great hardship. And He also created horses, mules, and donkeys for your transportation and adornment. And then He mentions what? He subjected the sea so that you may eat from its food, etc. And you see the ships plowing their way through it. Then He mentions the description of the ships before the sea, because the context is about the modes of transportation. However, in Surah Fatir, where He mentions the water first, therein you see the boats therein in the sea cleaving through it, mentioning the description of the ships later, mentioning the sea first. The context is about sea itself, the deep description of the sea. If you just see this very verse, and two seas are not alike. Now he goes into the description of the seas. This one is sweet, saturating, pleasant to drink. So much description of the sea. And that one is salt, bitter. But from each you eat fresh meat and derive ornaments that you wear. SubhanAllah. When He goes deep into the description of the sea, He mentions the sea first, therein cleaving through water. But when He mentions the modes of transportation in the context, He mentions the ship itself, which is a mode of transportation. SubhanAllah. So that's the purpose, first of all, so that those people who memorize the Qur'an in Arabic know the difference between mawakhira fihi and fihi mawakhira. You can just memorize it without understanding, but if you understand, it's a deeper understanding. And secondly, to give you a deeper reason to believe in God. Not only because you inherited this faith from your parents, because you see from your own eyes. It's just like those miracles, right? Just like Moses turned the staff into a snake. It's just like that. You see with your own eyes. The Qur'an is literally showing you words. Simply through the power of words, it's showing you a sign of God. SubhanAllah. So may God give us complete conviction in the Qur'an as the word of God. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.